Let's start just by opening, starting a new file, again, based on the residential default template. Residential default, open a new project. Just so we all have the same things as we start up. Okay, so just a little bit of little refresher about the materials browser. And first of all, we're going to be using that so much today and for the rest of your lives that I would like to make it easier to get at rather than having to go over to manage materials. I would just like to use as a shortcut for that. And here's how we do that. You can make a shortcut for any command you use a bunch in Revit. So we'll start exploring that. But if we go into View, all the way down here at the end, and I don't know just where it'll show up on a smaller screen, but it's this user interface button. And if we click that, down at the bottom of that is keyboard shortcuts. So user interface, or View, user interface, keyboard shortcuts. And what we have here is basically the list of all the commands that are available that way, plus for the ones that have shortcuts assigned to them, what that shortcut is, which is very helpful. So for instance, if your properties, you close your properties panel by mistake, just to like make room on the screen or something, you can just type PP and it shows back up again. Okay, so what we want to do is make one for the materials editor. And so firstly, I'm going to search up here for materials, because it's the materials manager we're doing. And we see right here that the command is materials and there's no shortcut assigned to it. So I'm going to select it, type MM, and assign. And it's saying that's already used by the command mirror pick axis. So I'm going to take it off of mirror pick axis, so we don't have to it doesn't have to choose for us. Okay. So for that, we can sort these alphabetically by command name, or we can sort them alphabetically by the shortcut, just like in the File Explorer. So they're all the way down here. Blanks come before letters. So scroll all the way down. We could do them at the top, sure. Well, there you go. Thank you very much. So I have to work down through Z's backwards, but it's shorter. You're right. And we'll get down here till we see that there are two for MM, mirror pick axis and materials. So I'm going to pick mirror pick axis, and I actually have to pick the shortcut to say remove that shortcut. This guy, remove it. So we're left, so MM will only bring up the materials browser, and you don't have to hit enter, just MM. So MM, okay. So when you type MM, up comes the materials browser. So in the materials browser, there are basically 5 tabs across here about each material. Let's pick the brick because it's easy to see. We're under identity. We have, if this were like a Maharam carpet or something, we could be putting in the manufacturer and the model and the cost and the URL of the website and stuff. I've never used this, never had the need to. Under graphics, it's showing us what this looks like in a hidden line mode, and then in just the plain shaded modes. Over in appearance is where we get the true photographic look of things, where the actual photographic texture gets applied to whatever. And we're not worried about these at all. So and we'll be working exclusively in the graphics and appearance categories, almost all in appearance at this point. So let's make a little, again, our little scene of a floor and a wall, just to have somewhere to put things. I'll use my wood finish floor. And just a gypboard wall. I use the wood floor just because it has nice wood texture attached to it. This is the wood joist wood floor. I'm using the interior 4.5-inch partition, and that's basically chipboard on both sides and studs. Let's go into manage materials. And I thought we'd start by creating our own material before we start delving into the complexity of those guys. And right down here, do you have this down here, Jolie? The little round thing with the plus sign? That's our create new material. And for the time being, we're just going to create a brand new material from scratch. Okay. And what this does is it creates some new material just called default new material, doesn't it? Create new material. Yeah, a default new material. And I wish it gave you a chance to rename it like right there, but you have to sort of go up and back up into here and find it again. So here I do want to give it a real name. And a couple of things about naming them is these are sorted alphabetically, and it's a pain to have your stuff sort of floating around down here in the middle of all of Revit's. So when I rename this, I'm just going to preface it with an underscore, which will sort alphabetically up to the top of the list. And then to keep the materials that I make separate from ones that I might get from other people, I just put my initials. And you can do this or not if you want, but it works. And then I'm just going to type red. We're just doing a red material. So we will all have something different, but you see it comes right up to the top of the list here. So right now it's just gray, nothing. And what we're going to do here in appearance is just give it a color. Right now it's sort of medium dark gray. We're just going to go and make it red. Pink. Yeah, just on the color. Yeah. There's a bunch of things we can do, but the fundamental one is just like its basic color. Just seeing Raleigh's screen, if you want to get the best preview of these, we have a couple of choices here. Well, let me cancel that for a second. Here, we can choose to see a thumbnail, which is this sort of semi-large view, or a list, which I think is what you have, Rella. Or we can see it just text view, which gets more of them in there if you want that. But I'm going for thumbnail view. Okay, there's that. Okay, so here we all are. We've got a red, weird, round thing. Let's make this a red cube. So this little guy here, we have a choice of what our scene is, and we'll just go to a cube instead. And then if you want to see it in more detail, we can grab this line right here and drag it down. Okay, we got this. Let's make just a modeled in place chunk of stuff here on the floor and make it the red color. We're doing architecture, component, model in place. We're just making a lump of stuff here on our floor. It's an extrusion. It's just going to be a rectangular extrusion. It's a foot high. Good, done. Finish model. Okay, view. Now I just want to get into my 3D view and just see the thing on the floor. Let's go into our realistic mode here. Realistic visual style, where we'll start to pick up the floor texture. And what I'm just going to start by painting the wall red, paint the town red. So we just use PT. Pick red, pick the wall. Okay, now I like to paint the top of the box red, but it won't work. The reason I can't paint on this guy right now is it was created in the model in place environment. We need to take it back to edit in place to edit it, anything about it. So I select it I go to edit in place. I can change the whole thing, first of all. If I want the whole thing to be red, I can just select it here um, in edit in place and change its material to our red color. Okay. Wow. And the reason I have two different colors is there is a sense of light coming from some direction that's bouncing more strongly off this horizontal surface than this vertical one. But you can see how the color changes depending on the direction that it is relative to the light. If you, as long as you're at it, if you're tired of the edges, you don't want to see the edges. And after all, we don't see edges in the real world. We can go down to visual styles. And sort of up here is where we sort of set the fine tuning of these guys, graphic display options, and you can uncheck show edges, apply. Okay. And once you get into this realistic mode, the edges start looking not, they really shouldn't be there. I mean, it's okay for the, the line drawings, obviously. So let's see it like this. And you see we're getting a little bounce off. So we're free of edges except when we're picking things. And just bear in mind also, we can pick this object, edit in place, use paint, pick a different material, and just paint one surface of it, which we did last Tuesday. Okay, the slow way is to paint them one by one. The fast way, yes, the fast way is to select it, edit in place, select it again, and just change the material for the whole object. This is the properties of that object right there, and we just change its material to whatever we want. So that's the simplest of materials. Let's go in there to the manager again and see what our options are on this guy. And at this point, I want to change it around to the sphere. And let's say we didn't want flat, we can make them reflective. So it becomes like a somewhat mirrored surface, and there's some sense of two big studio lights lighting this thing. And you can control the, let's see what that looks like with the cube. Let's go with, let's stick with the sphere. We can make the whole thing somewhat transparent. We've got a slider here. We'll explore all these. We'll get into these when we start looking at the ones that Revit made, but cutouts would be where it's like holes are punched in that surface and you can see through it. Self-illumination, it glows like a TV screen. Bump, get some texture to it. Tint, you can change the color. Let's look at tint for right now. Only one I really want to look at, which is if you got that main color, but you want some variations on it. Right now it's tinted. It's like this color has been added to it, but we could just as well tint it towards the blue. Apply, still pretty dark. Oh, I'm changing all this over here because this is my red color that's now transparent and bluish. Let's forget all those. Let's get out of there. I don't really want them transparent. Apply. Okay. So that's a simple material. I got ahead of myself. Let's look at the copper color. Yeah, here. Okay. Let's make that a cube. When we made our own material, Revit didn't know what to expect. It gave us a broad array of things we could do to standard materials. However, Revit also has an idea of what are called assets, which are like the underlying, it's sort of like a template for a material. And in this case, we've picked the template for metal. So we can choose which metal we want that to look like. I'll leave it on copper. We get to choose whether it's got sort of a patina age on it, which we can just use as a scroll bar and start adding stuff to. It does, yeah. And basically this is a number over here. It's like from 0 to 1. So right now it's completely oxidized. We got some finishes from highly reflective, but just where the metal is, to brushed. Let me kick the patina down to nothing. Brushed. Actually, this will be clear on the sphere probably. Yeah. Polished, mirror-like. So I guess these sort of decrease from mirrored down to more matte. What Revit understands as metals come with relief patterns where they look as if it's been raised like a checker plate or a diamond plate. You notice that it only looks that way. We don't actually have bumps on the edges. It's not actually adding those things. It's just making the material look like those things are there. But that comes in a bunch of different ones. You can start seeing here. Checker plate, and oh, here we could put a photograph in it, like emboss into it. We can do cutouts, which are holes in it. Yeah. Ooh. And those come in a couple of different shapes. What's Grecian? I don't know. Let me turn off that checker plate thing. Let me just turn that off. And each of those comes with a size to it. Hexagons. I'm gonna make them bigger. Anyway, so this is how you start to probably put together a material for fabric, perhaps curtain material where you want light to come through it, but to see something. And so let me turn that off. And then again, as with all of them, we can add a tint to it to make it brighter, I guess, or darker. Yeah, well, obviously too dark there. Or take them off into some different direction. So the sky's the limit as far as that kind of thing goes. Metal and glass are both pretty fun. Now, and this has just been like a plain flat material. What I want to look at next is with the flooring, is the oak, where an actual photograph is used and repeats across there. So let's look at the floor. There's the floor. Let's get at the thing this way. A different way to come into the materials browser is to select it, go into edit type, and edit structure where this oak flooring material appears. And we can use this as another way to get into that materials browser, just from right here. I guess we can just go pick. So here it is, oak flooring. And here's the information about it, which you can see is different from what we had for metals. Wood materials have a different asset grouping than the metals do. First of all, they're all based not on just an idea of a material that's been brushed or polished, but upon an actual photograph. And it's a photograph that is put together so it repeats so that you don't see where the joins are. It's called seamless joining, and we'll be working on that on probably next Tuesday, making our own seamless images that we can use for stuff. So what we have is this. And let's look at the photograph first. If we just pick it, we get this texture editor showing up, which tells us that the original image is like this big, based on these dimensions. So we're going to get planks that are about 3 inches wide, something like that. By the time we get there, there's like 8 of them. Okay. We can choose to stain it if we want. I have found that the staining really doesn't work very strongly. What works better if you want to make this darker is just to go right down to tint and give it like a reddish brown sort of a color to it. Where are those in there? Okay. To get work sort of in that was sort of up in here, mostly red. I think the stain works more on the dark parts of the image than on the light, and the tint works pretty much across the board. And with these, we have a choice of the different varnishes from glossy down to unfinished. This last one is called a relief pattern. And if we go in here, when we saw the sphere that had the knurled little triangles, tetrahedra coming out of it, what happened there was that there's a black and white image that's applied to that, and anything that is dark in that will be rendered as if it's receding from the plane that it's normally on, and anything that's lighter than that will be coming out towards you. So what this is saying is take the actual picture, use the black and white version of this as the basis of adding texture to this. So we can crank this up a ways to really emphasize that texture, or to de-emphasize it. 0 is right in the middle, and it can go down to -10 or something. And I think it's switching how it feels about those. But normally with wood grain, you want to have a little bit of texture to it. I don't know, like 0.3 or something, I think is sort of their standard. Something like that. We can zoom in and look at it. And that'll really only show up like if there's a window on a far wall and you've got some diffuse light bouncing off the floor towards you, and then you start to see the textures getting picked up. Well, over here is where we see the image itself. If we want to see the image, this is just a JPEG or PNG file in a folder. We can go down, if we just click on that, we're in Revit's materials library, where there like 1,000 different texture images, stone, pebbles, plant material, all sorts of things. And we can use views, thumbnails, but they're really not big enough here to get a sense of what they look like. So I have down here at the very bottom of page 2, if we just get into File Explorer for a minute, where to go to see them as large as you want. And that would be in Drive C, Program Files, Common Files, Autodesk Shared Files. Autodesk, Revit and AutoCAD share the same materials libraries. Materials, textures, and what we're looking at, the low resolution ones. We have the exact same images just getting twice as big and 4 times as big. If you're doing really big renderings, you want more detail. So we're just going to 1 and then mats, and then we have the whole slew of them here in File Explorer. And if we click on View Extra Large Icons, we can see each of those files. Wait, right here. Windows, Program Files, Common Files, Audio Share, Materials, Textures, 1, Mats. And these are folders that we can't add or erase or change. If we want to use one of these as the basis for one of our materials, we would save that in a separate folder of our own. Just so the next person who uses the computer isn't messed up with. And some of these are the straight images. So lots of concrete, lots of wood. What I want to call your attention to here is some of these are straightforward images, like different colored gravels and different kinds of wood. Any of these that say, like here I have asphalt, shingles, architect, color black, color brown, color gray. This one over here is asphalt, shingles, architect, bump.jpg. And it's the one that's going to be sort of used with these other ones to give it a true 3-dimensional look to it. It'll make the highlights look as though they're coming towards you and the shadows look as though they're going away from you. So if you're ever going through here, these won't even show up, I don't think, when you're asking. But that one, these guys are identical except for color, and this one will add the 3D look to all of those. So the bumps actually make them look bumpy is really what it boils down to. So we have asphalts, we've got plywood, we've got bamboo, we've got a bunch of different kinds of woods. Again, these are here are cutouts. Oh, that's an interesting one, where it's going to look like it's weaving. Anyway, say again. View. Anyway, that's where those are. Isn't that a nice one? Anyway, so what we can do here, when we see red oak classic natural and decide we would like something similar to that, we can click, let's do the image. If we want to go look at the list of them, we can go to pick it here, and we see where it is with its near neighbors. So we say red oak chocolate brown. Let's just try that. Open. So different texture, different colors. So far we've been dealing with a arbitrary bright red one we made, and one in the Revit folder. Let's say we want to do, the one I picked was a Sherwin-Williams. Paints, just Sherwin-Williams. And I want to look for this one called Azure Tide. I saw it at the store and it looked really nice. Azure, A-Z-U-R-E. And this is all at the bottom of page 3. So here it is, sort of within the, ones that might be named similarly. So if I click on View Details, Full Details, right here, it'll tell me the RGB values of that color. 67, 101, 133. Red, blue, and green. Red, green, and blue. Red, green, blue, which I wrote down over here. So knowing that, get rid of this. Let's go make our own paint material. And with paint, we have, in addition to like eggshell, glossy like that, we can choose whether it's been put on with a roller or a brush or sprayed on to give it slightly extra textury stuff. The one you really see is like on a curved baseboard, you'll see the highlights in the glossy ones where you won't see them in the flat or the eggshell ones. So it's that little extra bit of sparkle, if that's what you want. So where are we? MM. Let's just go right through this and make sure we get our stuff in the same thing. What I want to do here, I'm on the top of page 3. So still on page 3. I need to bring into this drawing the paint asset that includes glossy and spray paint and stuff. We click on this guy right here. So this is what's in our project. This is potentially everything that Revit has that we can bring into this project. So we click on here, and on AEC materials, I think I've got all this. Yeah, just at AEC materials, I scroll down to paint. LMNOP, paint. Paint. And over here, I've got 2 little codes. And this one basically just says, copy this sort of empty material up into this template for paint up into our model. So here it is, right there. And right now, before I lose track, I'm going to rename this to be the Sherwin-Williams one. Rename. And we're suggesting, it's nice if our paints are all together listed alphabetically. So I'm going to call this one paint. SW for Sherwin-Williams, so it doesn't take up too much space. And its actual number is 9684. That's their tag number for that, their model number. 9684. This isn't important, but and Azure AZUR Azure Tide. I'm going to do the matte one first. Okay, so paint Sherwin-Williams 9684 Azure Tide matte. And as we start putting together all of the materials for this project, we'll have paint and a couple of Sherwin-Williams and a paint and a Glidden and a paint somewhere else, but they'll all be right there together in the alphabetical list of these guys. So we don't care about this kind of stuff. We're going to go right to appearance. Oh, I see. I have to change it over here. I just wanted to capitalize the T, but that's all right. Go to appearance. And what we see, so fewer things to deal with here. We've got a color, and that's the one that we know is 67, 101, 133. Okay, so there's our blue. The RGB is universal. And we're going to make this be matte, this guy. This version is the matte one. And let's say it went on with the roller. Okay, let's open this up. So there's that. But I decided I want to use a glossy version of that for the door trim, let's just say. Well, here it is under P for paint. I don't want to have to go through all that again. I made the matte one, and I would like to just do the glossy version of that. So I'm going to select it, and I want to duplicate the material and its assets. So these actually end up being 2 entirely separate materials. And one of the reasons for that is if by mistake you end up editing an asset, if you use the same asset, they're linked, and if you change one, the other might change on you. And we've had some terrible late night things before the presentation of somebody's trim all changing to leopard skin because she decided to do a leopard skin throw pillow. So I just want to keep them separate. Oh yeah, this is an important place to remember to keep hitting apply. So to make the glossy version of this, instead of going through all that again, I'm just going to select this guy and duplicate the material and the assets. And down here, so it pops in right next to it. I'm just going to change matte to glossy. It's kind of a pain that we can't see This is when those different, yeah, right now, so I can hover over that. They switch places on me because of alphabetizing. So here's the matte one. Here's the glossy one. So on that one, I'm just going to change it to glossy and say it was put on with a brush. Okay. So if we were applying that to something round, we'd be getting reflections of the light fixtures and that kind of stuff. So please just always use duplicate assets. When you wouldn't do that would be for a project where you had multiple versions of the same thing. And if if one got a bit more yellow, you'd want them all to get a bit more yellow. But we're just not dealing with things at that level of control. Okay, there's that. So far, these have been just a one color applied to something generically, but like the bricks, I mean, a brick is 7 5/8 inches long and 1 2/3 of an inch high. And if we want our rendering to look like the bricks really are, we need to tell Revit how big to make that image when we apply it to the wall. Now I'm now here in page 4, number 6. Make a new material from an image of a known real world size. Here's the carpet squares image. Okay. Let me show you how I extracted these. Let me just delete that folder. Here in my downloads folder, here's the zip file that I downloaded from same way you guys did. If I double click on it, one of our options here is extract all. Okay, so watch what happens here. When I go to extract all, it's going to sort of try to put it in a folder in my downloads folder. I try never to leave anything in my downloads folder. I want to actually store it somewhere useful. Okay, so I'm going to say instead of putting into the downloads folder, I want to put this in. I think I have my documents. This would be a good time to create a folder for my Revit materials. So I'm going to right click, new folder. Okay, my Revit materials. And I'll just say okay. So documents, my Revit materials, that's fine, extract. And there they are in my Revit materials folder. So now I've got them in a good place where I can find them again, next project, next class, whatever. Don't have to sort through zip files on my hard drive. What we're gonna do is go in and make a new carpet material. Manage, materials, new material. We're gonna forget that there might be a carpet asset. We're just gonna make a new material. Okay, manage materials. This is the first one always over here. And then new. Okay, so create a new material. And now instead of giving a color, we're going to say use an image instead. So we'll go click on here, and it's in my Revit. Let's see where my Revit, it's in documents, my Revit materials. And now that I'm on this folder, something we can do in File Explorer. See, I've got my Revit families here. We can go down to Tools and say, add the current folder to Places. So now here that is, and it'll always be there, easier to get to than sort of digging down and digging down and digging down. Okay. And so the image we're going to use is carpet squares, because what we're doing is with that little aside, what we're doing is picking this material to be picking this image to be part of our new carpet material. And okay, so we've defined this thing, but it's still called default new material. So we need to right click, rename. I'm calling this _BG carpet squares. And I'm sure any firm with more than 2 people will have a very consistent way of doing this, of naming things and being able to find them again. Okay, so there's that. It's got a name, BG carpet squares. Let's look at this as if it's a carpet. scene can be, we can do it as a plane, sort of as a plane. You can sort of see that bopping in and out. That's not really that effective. Let's just take it back to a cube again. Okay, something like that. Now we need to tell how big this is, because Revit has no idea whether that's this big or huge. So here's where we pick the actual image itself. And we say that original image, which was 4 2 feet squares by 4 2 feet squares, so that's 96 by 96. We scroll down here and we say that this sample here, this original image, represents a width of 8 feet. 8 feet. And then if these guys are linked, it'll make the height be the same thing. Okay. Okay, now one thing we can do here is, you see we've got a color and an image. This slider tells us how much of the image is showing through. If we slide it back, we get more of just the color coming through and less of the image. So you can sort of dial it in that way. Usually with images, I crank them all the way up. That's what I want to have. And we have these various options here that we're not going to use. Okay, apply. So for this, let's make a rug and apply this to it. Rug would definitely be entourage. And I'm just going to make a big rectangle about this thick, just sitting on the floor. Remember last time when I was drawing that fireplace and it was like way off and underneath? That's because all these views start out with the, in the 3D view, their work plane is down here somewhere. I'm going to move the work plane of this view up onto the floor so we can draw stuff in 3D and have it end up on top of the floor instead of down somewhere. So it's pretty easy. So we can do this a couple of different ways. Architecture, set the work plane, pick a plane. If we pick set work plane, we could say pick the first floor level, so that where we're drawing in this 3D view is the same as if we were drawing in the 2D view. Okay, and that will stick with this view until we do something different with it. Okay, so this way I can draw in 3D and know what I'm getting. We'll go to architecture component. We'll just model and place this thing. This is certainly entourage. Carpet. And it's just going to be a big, shallow extrusion, let's say 1/4 of an inch. And I'm going to make this, it's going to actually be easier to see in a 2D view, but you can see right now I've got this be 8'10" from, I drew it and then picked the outside line, and it says it's 8'10" from this one to this one. So I'm going to make that be 10 feet. So an even multiple of 2 feet while we're at it. And I'll make this one, let's make that 12 feet. And that's too thick. So I'll go back and make it 0.25 inches. Okay, so it's in the right place. And I think what I'll do when I apply the material to this is apply the material to the whole object. So the color will kind of wrap down around these edges so we don't get little white lines around it. If I just pick the top face, we'd still get these little gray highlights. So we'll just see how that looks. Okay, So I'm going to go back into here, edit in place, select the object, and we'll pick its material to be that carpet. Oh, BG carpet. That's right. It worked. This is how it's supposed to work. Okay, BG carpet squares. Okay. Finish model. But I bet I didn't hit apply at some point back through there. Okay, so let's pick this. Oh, who knows? I didn't get that right. BG carpet squares. I didn't hit OK down here. I didn't. That should be in some bigger font. Okay. Finish model. Okay, good. The reason I picked it, the even numbers of feet, was I would like the edges of the squares to line up the edge of the carpet. So we have continuous 2 by 2 foot pieces instead of these little odd sized squares. But right now we don't have any way to move them. Let me just show you something here. Where did our brick get to? So just watch this part. If you remember, in graphic views, when we have a monochrome pattern assigned to this to show up in this kind of views, if we just hit Tab and pick one of the lines of the grid, we can move that whole grid around. And that's what I want to be able to do with the carpet squares, is to move my carpet squares around so they line up with the edges of the carpet. And we're going to need to do something first with that. Going back into materials. So we have the appearance all set up fine. What we don't have is the graphics. I would like to add a 2 by 2 foot grid that we would see in the monochrome views, and we can use that to move the squares around. We leave the carpet right where it is, but move the squares around relative to it. So here's how that works. What we're talking about is a surface pattern, and right now it has no pattern. The brick one would have the brick pattern right here, for instance. And we have two kinds of patterns. We have drafting patterns that stay the same size regardless of the scale of the image. What we want to do is model patterns, which if they're 2 feet apart in scale, as the scale of the drawing gets smaller, they're going to get smaller. So they're like a real thing. And I believe we already have a 24 by 24 inch grid that we use for ceiling tile, but we can also use it for this. It's just a grid. It's just a 24 by 24 grid. So we can pick that. So I went to BG carpet squares, foreground pattern, model. See, these guys have no dimensions associated with them. They're going to be the same size regardless of the scale of the drawing. And these guys all do change, 24 by 24, okay. And now we need to align the edges of this up with the edges of the image. So when we move a line, we're actually moving a photographic carpet square. And that's here under texture alignment. There we go. You can see part of the image here. And as you click the arrows here, you can see some very faint lines moving away from the intersections. We're trying to get them back pretty close to right on it, right where those guys come together. And usually it's pretty close to being right on to start with, but bricks will come off like a half a brick off. You move them over. I wish these were like orange lines. It's so faint you can really hardly tell, but here's what we're doing. Yeah, mine's the faintest. Mine's super faint. Okay. So we've done that. We say okay. Cancel. So now in this unshaded view, we have those lines that represent where the squares are. Okay, so here, let me do this. Let me take a first floor. Let me duplicate this first floor view. Duplicate view. WT. CA. So I'm going to move it in the monochrome view, and we'll see it in the shaded, in the realistic view. Okay, so I come over here, go to Tab to pick that. Why is that going? Ah. Tab, click. There we go. And the other lined up. Tab, click, tab. Or if you prefer to have quarter inch, half ones, you can do it. Okay, that's fair enough. Oh, okay. Remember, this guy was edited in place. So I think we need to go to edit in place, tab, click, move. You have to, this is the tricky part with these guys. Yes. Edit in place, hover over a grid line, tab till it's selected, click, and then you can move it independent of the whole thing. It's the same thing. It's just two different cameras aimed at the same thing. Yeah. And then finish model. And let's just make sure, let's make sure when I move this, that they go with it. Yeah, it's not like they've stayed behind somewhere. Let's see, documents, my Revit materials. I want to turn this guy into a wall covering. You see, it's not that, and there's no size associated with this. I don't even know where this came from, but because it's not that sharp, I don't think I'd want it to be like this big on the wall, but maybe a foot by a foot. We'll see what that looks like. And basically, the deal here is that this is a pattern that's going to repeat evenly. By the time this will copy over. Yeah, this should be fine. This guy, we're going to have to crop this one in Photoshop to make it a pattern that will repeat without being able to see where the joints are. So we'll get to that. But that's sort of my. How will this class go? Till 3:00? Okay, we're good. We're good. Okay, let's go to manage materials. And we're just going to create a new material, and that shows up as a default new material. Right click, rename, and we'll call it loops. Loops, LOOPS, loops. Oh, BG loops. Sorry for me. BG loops, LM. Right click, rename. Okay, just to keep them all uptight here. And if even an underscore would be fine, just to lift it up to the top. So we're going right to appearance. We'll come back at graphics if we have to. Appearance, image is going to be my Revit materials loop pattern, wherever you have carefully put that. So we create the material, we grab the image, click on the image to set up its size. And let's just make it a foot by foot just to see how that looks on the wall. And we won't change anything, just a foot by a foot. Okay, well, that's the default. Revit has no idea how big it is. I think it just takes the longest dimension and makes it a foot. Okay. Let's not change anything. Let's just say okay. Yeah. And while we're there, apply means make this happen and leave the dialog box up. Okay means make it happen and get out to the program and keep on using it. So I'm going to get into my 3D view just to be able to see. I'm just going to paint this wall with it. Remember, we haven't assigned it any graphic stuff yet. So if we right now, if I painted this, let me unpaint this wall. If we painted that wall with the new loop pattern, nothing would show up because we haven't added any actual lines to match that. I could have just painted on top of the brick and then the brick goes away and the new image is there. Okay, so let's get into our what you call it, realistic. And I actually didn't need to unpaint because the new paint will replace the old paint. Okay, so paint, BG loops. Boop. So there's that, but I would really rather if that were a different color. So how about, I want to make an azure blue variation of that since we know its numbers. Let's go back to manage materials. I'll keep a gray version. So I think I'll just rename this one BG loops gray. I'm renaming that one, the one that we had there. And then make me change it over to that cube again. Or walls, actually, that would be good since I'm thinking about this as a wall sort of a thing. This little guy over here lets me choose my scene that I see it on. And we might as well, since we've already assigned the size and the pattern and everything, just duplicate this and add a color to it. Duplicate materials and assets. Yeah. And we'll call this one BG loops blue. And now I want to see what the difference is between giving a color to this material up here and tinting the material down here. Let's just see what those are. I think what I want to know is that I've got a good sort of a light blue and a dark shadow. We'll just see. Let's just do it right here. Might as well. And remember our colors there for the azure blue was 67, 101, 133. 67, 101, 133. Okay. Okay. Nothing changed. Two reasons. Oh, but you're entirely correct. So PT for paint, BG loops blue, pick it. Okay. Here's why. Remember, we have a slider there that merges the image with the background color. If we pick this, we've got this slider here that means here the image is 100%. Here the color would be 100%. And in between would be something like this. Okay. But we're still getting a lot of the, yeah, I think this is a case where we want tint sort of applied to that image, not sort of sharing the limelight. I did 50, yeah. Redo painting it. I did PT for paint. Sorry, PT. Pick the material, pick the object. Not what I was hoping for. I'm expecting sort of a vibrant blue with strong shadows. So I think we need to go to tint in that case. Let's see what happens. Manage materials, BG loops. We'll just take our color all the way back up. So it'll be ignoring this color right here, frankly. And then go to tint and add those colors. 67, 101, 133. Apply. Okay. I mean, that looks great. I'm delighted with that. And the nice thing about this is that it already has the shadows and things sort of built into it. You really get a sense of its three-dimensionality. We don't have to. And then at home I collect. I've been on my. I've got an external hard drive. Over the years, I bet I've collected. I don't know how many thousands of images of wall textures, of plants, of artwork, of skies, of water, of stonework, of masonry, all sorts of stuff that I keep sorted. It's probably 50 different categories: magazine covers, stamps, license plates. I mean, whatever I happen to need. Some online, some from stuff I photographed. I live over near Bellarmine, used to, which has a bunch of, all the buildings are brown brick, but they're all different ways. So I have so many pictures of Bellarmine, just Bellarmine walls, just brick walls that I can use for something like this. Okay, that's pretty nice. Let's make one with that other pattern, the one that's sort of, well, we'll take a look at it. Manage materials, new, create new material, rename it, underscore BG. I think I call that pattern 57 because I had 56 others. This was 57 in that particular thing. Pattern 57. I'm going to get an image. I'm calling it pattern 57 because that's what the JPEG is. That's this one, wall pattern 57, and that's, we go to views. It's this guy, and I don't know how big it's going to decide this is. It decides it's a foot. I'm going to make it like 2 feet by 2 feet, just so we can see it a little better. And this is the image we're going to have to come and 2 feet. Sorry, 2 feet. Done. Okay. Paint. Okay, let me look at this in an elevation view. Okay, now the problem with this is I've got a join right down here, the middle. You can see the joint there, and it's not a. It's supposed to be a continuous field. It's not a. We can sort of see where that joint, and we can see where the joint is happening across here. So what we want to do is go back into that image and crop it down so that when it repeats, it'll be repeating perfectly. And it works well this way. We'll have to get into Photoshop for this. I'm just going to shut Revit down for minimize Revit. Open. Okay, so documents, my Revit materials. Okay, so what we have here is these sort of hexagons with like a flower inside. And I want to be able to repeat. I think if I crop it like from here to here, or here to here, let me just try that. So I'm going from the middle of this one to the middle of this one. Yeah, I can think of it this way. I've got a centered hexagon here and the pieces off to the sides. Yeah, we'll just try that. Enter. Not quite. I'll come back and edit this in a minute. No, I won't. I'll get it right now. Okay, so I'm going to save this as JPEG copy or something, just to see file, save a copy, copy. Let's just call this cropped. Okay. I'm going to leave, well, I'll just close that out. No. So we got these different wrong lines showing up here because I don't have a repeating section selected. So I'm going to go to back to manage materials. And instead of this one, I'm going to pick the cropped one. Okay. Apply. Okay. Looks better, but it's not exactly what it's supposed to be. Yes, it is. It's a, oh, I don't have the proportions right. That's the problem. I'm too squeezed vertically. So it looked like it was twice as wide as high. So I go back to manage materials, pick this, and let's say I need to make it twice as wide as it is high, or 1.5. To do that, I'm going to have to unlink the height and width here. I think that's how I do that. So I'm going to say, let's say that the width is 3 and the height is 2, 3 inches, 3 feet, and the height is 2. That looks good. Okay, nice hexagon there. Done. Okay. It's close enough. I mean, we could be doing a couple of different things here, but yeah, this is good. Okay. It's this piece, but that's just right. That's correct. Okay, that's good. So it might be that as you're, I mean, you're basically, I think what your assignment will be to a couple of materials. At least one will be from a photograph you'll need to crop to get it to be a repeatable module. I'm not doing these lectures in quite the same sequence that I've done them before, so I'm still thinking ahead of that.